Okay.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's ISE webinar. Really excited today. I'm joined by Linda, who many of you will recognise from the Apprentice. We'll get introductions done just briefly, but just before I start, if this is the first time that you've either joined a live ISE webinar or you're watching this from the website, you're watching the recording. This is part of a series of events that we do that's all around student employability, early talent employability, and helping young people get a good start in the world of work. And today's conversation is very much going to be around that. If you've got a question to ask, please just pop it into the dialogue box on the question. With so many people online, we tend not to sort of bring voices and faces into it because we all end up talking over each other. But please do use that dialogue box. Linda's promised me she's very chatty, so we'll answer any questions that you've got that you want to pop in there. And also at the end of this, you will get a recording. Linda's going to mention a code she's got for the work she's doing at the moment. We'll also pop that into the email so that you can get that afterwards. And also, please feel free to share the recording of this webinar. We're very keen that actually a lot of the work we're doing, particularly in a time like this, gets out to as broad an audience as possible. So that's the start of it over. Linda, shall we start with you? Do you want to just give us a sort of a brief introduction into your background, how you ended up sort of here on this webinar, how you ended up with the Apprentice? Because you didn't sort of go through the usual sort of college university route, did you?
I certainly didn't, and so hello to everybody. And actually, I'm amazed at myself that I am now giving a lot of talks, and I'm sitting here talking to people. I don't have a single academic qualification, so I think that I'm lucky to be here. But I guess I'm here because through my long journey, I have something that isn't taught in colleges. It isn't taught in universities. I was taught. I have a long line of business knowledge, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I think that's something that you can't necessarily teach unless you buy my course, which we'll get onto another time. So I started from the humblest of beginnings, absolutely, on a market stall, which many people do now. Left school at 15 without a single qualification. I'm not saying that that is the road to go down. I'm just saying that was my road. And I started from a market stall, and I took a business to the stock market. So anyone can do it. Anyone can do anything. You've got to have the drive and a few other things along the way. So yeah, so my business journey started on a market stall. I quickly moved into I helped my mother on a market stall. My mother was a secretary, my father was a tailor in Montague Burton's, and I helped on their market stall in Dewsbury. We quickly advanced from Dewsbury Market to Sheffield Market, and in those very early years there was no Brent Cross or Westfields, no indoor malls. There was just one building in Sheffield called the Castle Market, and it's so prominent in my life I have to talk about it. It was an indoor market. It was open 5 days a week. It sold everything from food to cafes to every fashions to handbags, and we were very lucky enough, and it was probably the first big break in my life. We were lucky enough to get a store in the Castle Market. We sold handbags and jewellery. I worked for my parents at that time, but we progressed from one stall to 3 stalls. I left school. The 3 stalls grew into 14 stalls all around the country: Sheffield, Rotherham, Doncaster, Bradford, Leeds. Indoor markets popped up. We had shops. So my business journey started. I then moved in. I was in the fashion business, which was my love, and I love fashion. I love style, home, still today. Moved on to the wholesale business because I had 14 shops. I then realized, because I am a person, and this is good advice, I never say no. I always say yes until I have to say no. Positive thinking, positive outlook, driven, focused. So I started a wholesale because in my distribution centre for the shops, someone walked in. It was in an area with a wholesale, and said, "Do you wholesale goods?" And I said, yes. We didn't, but I thought, well, why not? Why not just buy more? and sell them because I had the power of big buying, which enabled me to resell. That's what I did. I opened a wholesale, and then one day someone phoned me up and said, Linda, a friend of mine, Chinese, think you should go to Hong Kong because I've got a friend, he's got quotas, because in those days it was pre-EU. We're now going back that you needed quotas. I think you should go and see him. By this time, I had quite a substantial business. I had good buying power. And I have to say, I've got a creative mind. Now, I'm not saying, you know, maybe that's my talent. Some people can be a hairdresser, some people are technical. I've got a creative mind. So therefore, fashion styling is part of me. And I always felt that there was a lack in the market for a kind of knitwear. Knitwear was a big part of my business. So I got on a plane, I went to Hong Kong, because one of my great sayings in life is, I'm not lucky, I've seized opportunities. And that is what we all have to do. Recognizing them is quite important, but we all get opportunities. I got on that plane, I went to Hong Kong, and I met this guy, and I realized at the time that I could buy 2,500, 3,000 of a style. I wasn't really intending to launch an importing business. I went with the thought, what's the downside? Very, very little, because I can sell 3,000 of a style in my own retail and wholesale outlets. By the end of the trip, I realized I've got something here. I could build a brand with this. I shouldn't just sink it into my retail. I should give it its own identity. This is all in my course, how important it is. So I thought, right, I'm going to make this a brand. I'm going to give it a name, this range of designs I've done. So it's got its own identity. And it all happened in Hong Kong. It was feminine, the merchandise. I wanted a feminine name. I called it Honeysuckle because it was representative of the brand I was building. I didn't know how big the brand was going to be, but I just thought, I never know. I'm a person, I never really know where I'm going at the end. I just know I'm on the road. I don't bite everything off all at once, because I think if you do, that can be scary and you just don't know where things are going to take you. But I thought, I've got something. So took my samples back, and the minute I hung them up, they had their own identity, as I put a lot of importance in my course to USP, unique selling point. You don't have to be unique, but you need to know what is your unique selling point. I made everything floral and pretty, and I brought it to the mass price. That was my USP, and I knew it had broad appeal. Anyway, everyone said, wow, we really love these styles. Before I brought a single piece in, I'd pre-sold everything. So I knew I was onto something. Stop me when I'm rambling on too long, because
no, it's all right. I've got a few questions lined up. I think it's just to know the. You miss those days, interestingly, because I mean, you talk to some entrepreneurs, they really miss actually the kind of the startup phase almost. That's where they get the buzz and the excitement.
I do, yeah. Well, that's why I've ended up in lockdown starting this, which is almost a new business and something I know very little about, and has a lot of the technical side I know very little about. But I think if business and trading, and most businesses end up trading businesses in one way or another, I think if it's in your blood, it's in your blood. And yes, certainly when I retired from my years in Hong Kong, which actually I ended up working 25 years an office in Hong Kong and traveling all over the Far East. When I finally retired from that, I missed that. But I didn't miss trading, because I went into the property business, and the property business was just trading in millions more, you know, buying and selling high-end residential houses, and I decorated them because I felt, again, I've always looked for a USP. And I felt people don't have a vision, so let me dress the houses and furnish the houses, and then they won't have to think what they look like, and I just put it in as part of the price of the house. Didn't care if they bought the furniture or not, but I thought they don't need a vision, they don't need imagination. But from that, an interior design business grew. I never intended this to do, but not everyone bought the houses, but many people wanted to know, well, who's done the furniture, who's done the interior design. I had a team in place, so I started an interior design business again, with a USP, I decided if I'm going to do this, I want to have a niche. I want my own unique selling point. So I just did it for people, what I call cash rich, time poor, property developers, people who wanted a show home, people who live abroad and haven't got the time. They need someone who will do everything from the plans to the building work to the finishing product. So that was my USP, and that's where I still am today, still in the property world.
Got it. So you've obviously run sort of, you know, very large businesses. You said you built something up that's floated on the stock exchange, which is no mean feat at all. So that's sort of a large corporate style business, and then smaller businesses. So you must have recruited, you know, a considerable number of people along the way at all levels. And of course that's what you do on The Apprentice, isn't it? You're involved in the interview stage, which sounds pretty which looks pretty rigorous every time I see it. I mean, is there anything that I mean, I always get asked by students, what's the magic one thing? I say there is no one thing that makes you stand out, but are there things that you found in the people that you brought in from the early start of their career that has made them successful? Are there some commonalities you look for in the people that you bring through and develop?
I'm a driven person. I'm focused and I'm motivated. And obviously, when you're building a business, I mean, my business started off tiny, but I'm a believer in scalability. I knew it had scalability, and you can't do things on your own. You need teamwork, team building. But I look for people. So for my own businesses, I look for people who are like-minded. You know, whatever job I'm doing, I like people who want to be incentivized, because that shows me they're hungry. So I like to see straight away people are motivated, they're driven, they're asking the right questions. You know, when you go for an interview, you want to ask the right questions. And I like people who are honest. If you can't do something, say you can't do it, but say you want to learn. You know, I appreciate that. And really, those sentiments have carried me through to the people I see on The Apprentice, because I'm looking for common sense. That's very important, and it can be rare. There can be a shortage of common sense. So obviously you're looking for common sense, but you know, you're looking for a business. If I'm looking for Lord Sugar's £250,000 investment, I'm looking for a business that adds up, that has scalability, that makes sense, that shows me the candidate knows what they're doing. And I never I go back to when I say don't bite everything off all at once. You know, I don't like people who run before they can walk. I like people who want to get to the end of the race, but you've got to walk that line, and you've got to know that you need to be able to do that. And I'm not, you know, so people, that's what I look for. And I don't mind if there's mistakes, because we've all made mistakes. But I like to see people who say, what's the opportunity? And if you're going for an interview, you know, you prep for it properly. And don't be afraid to say, I can't do it. But don't walk in and say, how much holiday do I get? What are the hours? You know, what can I do? How do I, you know, and if there's a commission structure, everything, you know, how do I get to that? What do I do? And for me, it doesn't matter if a business, but I can't really do that, but I want to learn. Those things really are what trigger me, you know, when I'm interviewing people, and what people, when they go for an interview, they need to be well prepped, have a good CV as well.
And we talked a bit about commercial skills, didn't we? I mean, I was just before we went live on air. You know, if I was going back to my corporate days, even in large corporate organisations, you know, I worked in big professional services firms, but the partners in those organisations are still building businesses. And I remember the financial crash, and some of the graduates saying, "Well, God, where do the next clients come from?" It's kind of like, well, everybody's got to go out and win them. Business still needs to be won, and I think sometimes people don't quite get that, do they? There's an element, we can call it selling, calling, whatever, business development. Business needs to be won, and everybody needs to be involved in that.
Well, I think you recognize it, because if you're an entrepreneur, you recognize you can't just give up and look at the changes we're going through now. So business needs to be won. You have to be focused, you have to be driven. And when you face problems, they need solutions. This is my first pandemic, but I've certainly lived through challenging times, starting with a 3-day week. Try having a trading business in 3 days, in a 3-day week, when you're in darkness 4 days a week, you know, those things. And, you know, try having a business selling multi-million pounds and suddenly the buying in dollars, and suddenly the dollar drops to the pound drops to 103 or 104. Problems need solutions. And just as we went through the 2008, you know, with the mortgage companies and the banks, so you have to be resilient, you have to adapt, you have to pivot, and you have to not give up. Don't be complacent, because we don't know what's coming around the corner. But for me, whatever I've done in my life, business has always been at the back of my mind, you know. And as I said to you, you know, you might be a pharmacist, but if you've got entrepreneurial skills, you'll end up with a few chemist shops, you know. And qualifications are good. It's like, as I said, passing a driving test. That's all good, but you don't really learn to drive till you're actually getting in the car and driving on the road, are you? So
absolutely. And I think you've hinted at that willingness to learn as well being important.
yeah.
Is you do have to, whatever your trade is, you have to learn it. And there's, you know, the ambition is a great thing, but also you've got to, you know, not go slow, but you do need to. Yeah,
and you've hit the nail on the head. You know, if you and when I'm interviewing people, obviously if it's for my own personal needs, and if a person is really willing, and they may be a bit short on some of the things, but they're willing and they want to learn, and you know they've got, if you can teach them really, that's so important. You know, willingness is very, very important. Or motivation, you know, showing that you've got the drive and admitting, I don't know that. I'm not afraid of people saying I don't know, or afraid to fail, because we all fail sometimes, but you know, failure might set us up for the next success. Perseverance, to me, is one of the most important words in your life's business journey. You can't just give up, you know. When you've got to persevere, you've got to really really look at things and really see, how can I get over this? What do I do next? You know, don't fall flat on your face, because, and hey, look at the time we're living in now. If ever there was difficult times, we're in it.
Yes, they are. Yeah, I'll come back to that in a minute. I have to ask you about The Apprentice. So how did you end up on The Apprentice? Because you've been doing it for a few series now, haven't you?
Yeah, I've done it for 5 years. So I first met Alan Sugar in Korea when I was doing knitwear, and he had a company called Amstrad, and I met him there, and I would see him quite a lot there, and that was over 20 years ago. But I knew him. I wouldn't say I socialized with him, but I knew him quite well, and I saw him at some social events. And Alan lives in half the year in Florida, and I have a place there as well, and I have a son who lives there. And he called me one day out of the blue about 6 years ago, and he said, Linda, I'm looking for an interviewer for my final 5 on The Apprentice. I want someone who's going to dig deep and expose those weaknesses. Can you do it? And I thought, well, I don't know. Can I do it? Did I know I could build a fashion business, a brand? No. Did I know I could have an electronics business? No. Do I know if I can be an interviewer on The Apprentice? No. But will I have a go? Yes. So I said, well, I don't know. But he said, okay, I'll hook you up with the people at the BBC. Go for an audition. And they sent me a mock. They sent me a mock interview, and I went for my audition. And I know that I have been called the Queen of Mean after my first. Obviously, I succeeded at the audition. I got the mock candidate in tears. That was, and then the lady from the BBC says, "Can I introduce you to the producer of the show?" So I thought, I've done all right here. And so, you know, I delivered Alan's brief: dig deep, expose the weaknesses. Get called the Queen of Mean. I'm not, but anyway, it delivered the brief.
There's an element of TV and theatre in all this, isn't there? I mean,
Well,
it's a TV show. I remember seeing Nick Hewitt said, if we were going to do an academic programme on business, it would be on at 3 in the morning and nobody would watch it. So, but I'd imagine actually behind the scene, there's quite a lot more deep. We just see, you know, effectively sort of 20 minutes, don't we? I'd imagine there's a lot more that goes into those interview days.
Reality TV is TV first. That's not to say everything you see isn't real, but of course it's editing. So my interview is 40 minutes with each candidate, non-stop. There are no takes, right? So obviously, and then it's edited, and they like to edit the best bits that perhaps show me, oh, Linda, you never give the people a chance to reply, the candidates. Actually, I do, but I just edit that out, you know, and it's edited, but it's real. It's all real. There's nothing made up. It's real. It's just the way it's edited, and it's #2 show on the television behind Strictly when we can film. So, and for me, it was, it was quite life-changing, because I think two things really. I think Alan likes someone. For Alan to have a 30-year-old might not be quite right to relate to him. So he likes people who can relate to his thinking and know what he's looking for. So he's had a long journey of entrepreneurship, as I have. So I think I was a good candidate for that. I could spot what, you could get someone who might have a great business, but they could not possibly work with Alan. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Yeah, but it was great.
Because it must be quite a close relationship. It's quite different when you're working that closely with one person rather than a much broader team, I guess.
Yeah, and I mean, he does have a team in place for the winners, but nevertheless, you have to know who you're interviewing, and you might get a candidate that has quite a good business plan, or it might be a good idea, but it's not going to work for Alan. So there's a lot that goes into the winner of the final five. I mean, as I say this a lot, when you get to the final five, you've gone through 10 weeks of grueling tasks. You've shown many different abilities that you can achieve to get there. So really and truthfully, they're all winners in their own way. But then we just have to pick the one that's got the best business.
Because it's tough, isn't it? I mean, we see on a weekly show, but actually, if you're a candidate, that time is condensed right down. I've seen a couple of presentations of candidates, and they are, part of the reason they do sometimes maybe make mistakes is because they're worn out. They're put under quite a lot of pressure, aren't they, back to back?
They've had 10 weeks of filming, grueling filming. They're not allowed a mobile phone. I think they'd get 2 minutes call a week. It's very, very grueling, And then they have to face me and present me with, perhaps they might present me with, a business plan of 60 pages. I'd say always keep everything short. And, you're reading through this and go, what is this waffle I'm reading through? Just, So, but it's grueling. That's why I say the final five are all winners, really, in one way or another, because they've got through pretty grueling tasks.
To survive that way, yes.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about your business academy, which you launched last year, because that's quite different to everything you've done in the past. So what's your thinking behind that? What's driven you to create that?
Well, first of all, as I said, I've had a long journey, and I started off without a single qualification, and I managed to take a business from a market stall to the stock market. I've had 3 or 4 different businesses. So I feel that I am equipped to actually advise and guide people and give back. So I decided that I would write a business course. But as I told you, my education has been quite minimal, the business course is written just the way I'm speaking to you today. It's written in my kind of language. It doesn't have graphs and charts and jargon. It's straight talking, 12 chapters of, well, I call it 12 chapters from how to get an idea, because people might think, well, I need to get an idea now, and many people have had a year to sit and do nothing, and we're going to face a lot of challenging times ahead with unemployment, etc. So I start with how to get an idea, and I finish with how to run a business in challenging times. And I give you all the tools, and it doesn't matter what age you are. I give you the tools you need to succeed in business. And these, I believe, in my course, what I've written, you can't get it in a university, you can't get it in a college, and you can't get it in a school, because I'm giving you my lessons in life, my expertise, and everything I've done from a market stall to an interview on The Apprentice, I've put in a course, and I think I can give back and help. And then I added on to that. So then I thought, well, once I've written the course, people need a good CV, and they're going to really need a good CV today. It's very, very important. So I've added how to critique your CV, and I've got a service that I'll critique their CVs, because it came off a TV program that I did where I was presented with some CVs, and there's tricks of the trade, there's rules that you have to do, and then if people have got a business idea, they can get their feedback. So, and I even put a financial template that they can buy, because when I get my P&Ls on the Apprentice and I see they have no idea really what's involved, the financials, if they were looking for an angel investor, they're looking for a bank, how to really fill in all those gaps. So I just made it nursery to remember what you need, what your overhead is going to consist of, because it's all right with an idea, but ideas are great, but you have to execute it. Having a business idea is good. What's all the fundamentals that go behind it? So my academy, and we're putting out newsletters and blogs, and the other thing that I really feel is important is when you buy my course, you connect with me. So I'm starting my own talks, my own newsletters, because I think just to buy a course is one thing, but to be able to actually connect with me, because I want to connect with people, I want to help people really. So that's what my academy is all about. It's about really showing people what I've learned, giving my expertise, my guidance, and connecting with the people. And I've made it, I hope I've made my course at a very fair price, which is £99, and there's a discount code today for anybody who wants to buy it. They can get 25% off anything on my website, and I'll give you that at the relevant time.
Fab. And we'll get it at the end, then we'll also put it in the email that we send afterwards. Entrepreneurship is something that actually does get quite a lot of attention. We get asked about it quite often, and as I said, I find often that large corporates are also interested in this, because actually, it's about creativity, it's about building organizations, growing them, etc. Do you think it's something that as a country we need to be better at, which is recognizing and building entrepreneurs? We're very well known for having very good creative industries. I just wondered if you had a bit of view. You've worked in lots of places around the globe, you've had an international business. Is it something we need to be better at, do more with particularly young people?
I think the thing is that when you work in the Far East, which my career really started there, and you see how business-minded the people are throughout Asia, I think we need to focus now, and which is why I'm hoping to give talks in schools. We do need to focus on building entrepreneurs and teaching people how important whatever industry they're going into, how important it is to have your entrepreneurial skills. Now, you can't just teach someone to be an entrepreneur. Okay, I have this lesson, you're an entrepreneur, but you can provide them with the skills, with the knowledge of what they're going to need, and help with their thinking and their mindset. And yes, I think we should be doing more in our country, especially now, because we are going to pivot, we are going to change, the complexion of the high street is changing, jobs are changing, everything's changing, so we're going to need some of this now.
And young people at the moment are, quite rightly, there's lots of pressure, lots of concerns, and sometimes I think that that students disengage from the job market because they think that, they read all the headlines, think, well, there's nothing happening. But actually, when you look at our data, although it's a tough market, I'd never want to belittle it, but actually roughly 85% of a normal year's recruitment is still happening. But is there any kind of any advice? You mentioned you've worked through recessions and difficult times. Is there any advice you would give to young people who are looking at this sort of the broader work and what happens, either whether they're leaving school, college, or university, at a challenging time like this?
Apart from buying my course.
Apart from buying your course, exactly.
I think that what young people have to look at and what they can recognize quite easily is what's changing, what's going to thrive and survive going forward, and I like to use the saying beds and sheds, but actually the truth is lots of the retail as we know it is dying, but the people who work in retail stores will probably be working in distribution warehouses now, won't they? So we look to what I would say is look to the businesses that are going to thrive and going to survive, are surviving and developing, and look at your skills and how can you adapt your skills to use them into what's going to be our future. You know, you can't just sit back and say, oh God, it's terrible now, unemployment's going to fall. No, we're in a pandemic, but we're going to come out of it, and we're going to see a lot of industries, new industries developing, and that's where you should be looking for your future. You have to look at, you know, if you're young, and you have to look for the future and what's going to be good, what's going to be happening, and lots of things will, and that's where you have to focus and put your aspirations and your ideas. That would be my advice.
Can you talk a bit about that skills bit you just mentioned around, because, you know, everybody has their own natural attributes or things they're better at than others, and is that something that you've learned through your business career, which is how do you recognize what you're good at, and maybe how do you recognize what you're not so good at, and how do you cover off some of those things that people might call weaknesses?
Well, for me, recognizing what I'm not good at is very easy, because I'm really hopeless at accountancy and technical skills. But I knew I was creative, and not everyone can be good at business, but I was always motivated and driven, and I looked at my business as a hobby. It was like a hobby. I love business. I love every kind of business, and I feel I can always see the angle or the element. So for me, I think everyone recognizes what they're good at. It's a bit like in my first chapter, I write how to get an idea. Well, one of the things, you know, without giving too much away, what do you love and what are you good at? And then how do you put that into a business? What you're not good at, for someone like me, it wasn't really a problem, because I might not be good at accountancy and I might not be good at technical things, but I can employ the teams of people that are to support me. So I think if you're not good at something, but you need to be good at it, if it's in your business, and if you can exploit what you're good at and get someone to help you in the bits you're not good at. Because if you're going to have a business, lots of businesses need to be scalable. You need a team behind you. Recognizing what you're good at. I mean, I don't know, I'm not, you know, I can't do hair, but I guess some people can recognize they're a flair for hairdressing. They know they're going to be a good hairdresser. I loved business, and so for me, whether it was jumpers, sweaters, fashions, or whether it was electronics, whether it's buying and selling houses, whether it's interiors, and whether it's writing a business course, I like business. And I think I think lack of education hasn't stopped me being successful. I might have been more successful or less successful, I don't know. So I think people know what they're good at. They know what they like as well. And if you, half the battle is if you really like something, you're passionate about it, and then you can take it from there.
Yeah, find what you're good at and do more of it is I've had one question through actually from Paul at University of Exeter, who makes the comment that, and I've seen this myself, which is universities have come a long way in recent years, embedding a lot more experiential learning into the curriculum, entrepreneurial skills. He mentions a programme, an EU Entrecomp framework available to universities. And Paul's just wondering if you have a view on that kind of programme, and can that stuff be embedded into university curriculums?
Well, having never been to university, I can't tell, but I think if it isn't, it should be. They should be. As I said, you can't really teach someone to be an entrepreneur, but you can give them the skills that they need. And I think it's important it's important to recognise how important it is to have entrepreneurial skills. You know, even whatever profession you choose to go in. If you're an architect, you can be an architect, or you might own an architect's company where you've got people working for you. So I think it's important to recognize entrepreneurial skills are very, very important in today's world. They always have been, because if you look at Lord Sugar, one of the most successful businessmen in the country, he also hasn't got any qualifications, and also only went to what we call the University of Life, started selling aerials off the back of a van. So there's the answer to your question. How important are entrepreneurial skills? How you teach them is another story, but they need to be included.
Another question I just had through as well, and you mentioned this actually just before we went on air, is 'cause I think you said you built some of this into your program, which is around mental health, and obviously that's something that people quite rightly are very much concerned at the moment. Do you think there's more that we can do to help people with their mental health and help deal again with the difficult times that we're in at the moment?
Well, I've just finishing writing a new chapter, 40,000 words, on entrepreneurialism and mental health. But I think at this point, mental health is very, very important for many, many reasons. So, as people will know, I am not a fan of working from home. Because for me, creation is collaboration, and I think I have accepted that we will probably come out of this with a hybrid system, and people will probably work from home and go to an office. But what worries me so much is, it's not just about working from home, is it? Not everyone has a lot of space. People, mental health can affect so many people now. There might be people who they live in a bedsit, and really, for the last year, they haven't gone to their office. They haven't gone out after work and socialized, so their life has been mixed with going to work, meeting people, socializing with friends. Or you might have, mums and dads with 3 kids homeschooling and working from home. They might live in a small apartment, or you might have people that are just lonely. So mental health is affected in so many ways, and it's something that we have to face. We have to look at it, and we have to realize it will have an effect. It does have an effect, and we have to realize how important it is going forward and helping people. And that's part of the reason why I like people into an office, getting together. Isolation for me can be devastating for many, many reasons. And I know lots of people put towards, how good working from home is. And many people, have worked from home forever. But for me, I think working from home and all that goes with that, and then for the reasons I've just stated, for the various families and the different circumstances, it can be devastating on your mental health. And it's something we have to recognize the importance of coming out of this pandemic.
Another question I've had through Linda is somebody's asking if because they're talking about how the student comes to them and says, should I go and work for a big business first, go into a corporate environment, go on a training program, and then set up my business later, or should I actually go and be an entrepreneur first? Do you think there's a right or wrong, or is it just different routes for different people?
I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think if you've got an idea, I think if you've got a good idea, there's never a wrong time to start it, but there might be a more right time to start it now, when it's quite competitive in the job market and difficult in the job market. So if you've got an idea, you should start it. It just depends. If you feel that if you go work in corporate for 2 or 3 years, it will give you a better knowledge, a better understanding to exploit your idea, then yes, you should do that. But I would say, if you've got an idea, this is probably one of the best times to start your idea. And I think also you're going to find that there will be entrepreneurs, there will be angel investors. People are interested in backing people with ideas, so I think if your idea is good and it's got merit, and there's a lot that needs to go into an idea, because an idea is lovely. It's like in my fashion business. It was beautiful. I could have a beautiful sample made up. That looked fabulous. But executing the delivery to get that sample to the customer took a lot. I used to say my sample's 20%, execution delivery 80%. So, I would say if you've got an idea, that's where you start the story. And certainly this is a good time. Have a go. It might be an old-fashioned statement, but have a bloody go at things, if you've got an idea. But if you feel, if I go work in the corporate world, I'll be so much better with my idea, then do that. Or, go work in the corporate world and work at the weekends at night time on your idea, because, hard work is good.
Yes, the side hustle. And also, people forget about the mistakes that people make as entrepreneurs. I mean, everybody talks about Richard Branson's successes, but he's got quite a few failures that have racked up along the way, trial and error.
Well, I always say, don't be afraid to fail. You know, we've all had failures, and the truth about a failure is, if you've got perseverance and sustenance, you'll recognise, whoa, that was no good. But sometimes what you've done wrong lays the ground for doing it right the next time. We're not all perfect, and you know, we shouldn't have expectations of ourselves to be perfect. Just do your best, try your best, and have a go, because if you don't have a go, you'll never know, will you? You'll just never know unless you have a go. And that's quite an important statement. You never know if you don't try. If I wouldn't have gone for an audition on The Apprentice, yeah, well, was I scared? I was really. I thought, blooming hell, what am I going to do on television, and how am I going to interview these candidates, etc. But I thought, well, I've always had a go at everything, and what's the worst can happen? I'll be no good. Not going to kill me, is it?
I used to think when I was interviewing candidates, because sometimes you do get a perfect candidate, and you say, so tell me about when something went wrong. If they couldn't say anything, I thought, well, you're either lying or you've not pushed yourself. It's one of the two. Because
I don't have to worry about that, because I just say, let me see, is there any common sense in this application? You know, and yeah, but no, you just got to have a go.
Yeah, I've had a question here from Claire. So Claire talks about role models, and she's asking two things really. How important do you think role models are, to have good visible role models? And she also said, did you have any particular role models yourself when you were starting out?
Well, when I started out, Claire has to understand, women were certainly not at the forefront of business, right? Not in any way. I was quite on my own, and then running my business mainly from the Far East in a totally a man's world, where, you know, in Seoul, Korea, where I had an office, if you were a woman, you were really a second-class citizen. Did I have a role model? Yes, I did. And my role model was Margaret Thatcher. She may not have been a business woman, but she was a woman that I admired. I didn't meet her, but I would have loved to have met her, because she was tough, and she was a woman in a man's world, and she didn't take no for an answer. And one of my favorite sayings, this lady is not for turning. And so she was my role model, actually. And what was the rest of the question?
Well, the first bit of that was actually, do you think they're important? It is important for particularly young people to have visible role models to,
well, I do. I think
to aspire to learn from.
Yes, I think it's important to have people to admire, people to aspire to, people to look up to. Yes, I do. I think it's important.
Fantastic.
You were going to mention.
You were going to mention a code for your course. Do you? Because when we were having a chat about this, because we were going to do this early in the year, weren't we? We had to postpone it.
Yes.
I do think there's something around actually your content, which is actually, it is about entrepreneurism, and it is something that I think that universities have done a lot more on colleges, and we can build it on. Do you want to read that out? But we can put it in the email as well at the end of it.
So they have to go to hello@lindaplant.com, and that gets them to my website, lindaplant.com, and then they get 25% off anything they want to buy. But the blueprint course, which is £99, they get 25% off, and the code is I for India, S for sugar, E for England, 25. So sorry, hang on a minute. Yeah, www.lindaplant.com. That's my website. And just to let you know, so this is coming. So the title of my new chapter, which isn't out yet, is Business Success and Good Mental Health in a COVID World. So that's coming next. But I hope that my words have inspired people, because that is really what I want to do, to give people inspiration, and still in my long journey, my journey hasn't ended. It's a new chapter now, and to show people that you can do it, and there are lots of opportunities ahead and good times when we emerge, which we will do from our pandemic.
Fantastic. And the little voice you might have heard there is Hayley's, because if people are looking at the screen, they'll see Hayley's name under your face, Linda. So I thought we have to name check Hayley. She's been very helpful in sorting this out.
Haley is my executive assistant because, as I said, when you asked me, well, Linda, you know, what are you not good at? Well, I'm really not good at anything technical, even getting the webinar up to date. So Haley is the go-to person, and she assists me, and she does all the hard bits. Really, I just do the talking. So yeah, Haley gets together, and she will receive everything. So that's why she's mentioned.
Fantastic. So it is fair to say, I think, if anybody wants to get in touch with you, because you mentioned you're interested in talking to schools and maybe other students. So if people want to come through, ping me an email, Stephen with a PH at ise.org.uk, and I can put you in touch with Linda and Haley. That's great. For your time, a really good conversation. I've had a final comment from hoping I'm pronouncing this right, Viva. Viva says, not a question, but a comment. So inspiring. So there you go.
Thank you very much. Well, it's made it all worthwhile. Thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Right. Thank you very much, Linda, and hopefully we'll talk again at some point, maybe in slightly better economic time. So thanks for taking the time today.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks very much.